Hello everyone, my name is Tommaso Elli and I'm a PhD student in design from Politecnico di Milano. In this presentation I'm going to present you the Academia Styling Notes, which is a visualization project that I've done during my internship at Ontario Tech in collaboration with Adam Bradley, Christopher Collins, Uta Hierix, Zachary Hills and Karen Kelski. During this presentation, I'm going to guide you through the steps of our research, and in particular we will see the data, our research questions, our explorations of the data, the design iterations, and the learned lessons. So, sexual harassment, unfortunately, it's a problem that is diffused in many different fields, and there's also inside of the academy. We know this because there are some articles, or many articles, for example online, talking about the issue, and also because it's something that is mentioned inside of university regulations and policies. But also, we know this because of the stories of the people who experienced this inside of their experience in academia. Karen Kelski, who is an anthropologist and an academic advisor and a coach or counselor, know this very well because of their job. And in 2017, she decided to collect as much stories as possible through an online survey. The survey eventually was shared on social networks and went viral, and so she was able to collect quite a lot of answers, more than 2,000. Inside of the survey, she was asking participants to describe their incidents, and she was asking other open-ended questions such as who was the harasser, who is the victim, which kind of institutional response were there, and if there were any consequences in terms of harasser career, victim career, or mental health and life choices of the victim. The data, the qualitative data that she had out of this survey is very intimate and sometimes it's very heartbreaking. As visualization researchers and members of the community, we were concerned about the fact that this issue is underreported and underrepresented. And so we were interested into a couple of questions. So first of all, the first question is, we as visualization researchers, what can we do and how can we use visualization to give visibility to this sort of issue? And eventually, how can we extend lessons that we learn, in this case, to other social issues? And secondarily, if we do this visualization, which kind of awareness should we manifest, and how should we treat the data? Which choices should we make? And in particular, since the data is very intimate and it's about personal stories, how can we honor and empower those individual voices without hiding them in aggregations or without reporting them in a way that could be perceived as unrespectful? So the first step in our research after getting the data was to engage into close reading of the data, meaning that we were reading answer by answer the survey. Not all of them, of course, because there were too much, but this was very useful because it helped us in understanding the nature of our data, the fact that, as I already said before, it's heartbreaking and it's very intimate. But given the amount of replies, we were also interested in finding out if with some computational methods, and in particular natural language processing, we were able to discover any patterns. Interestingly, some of them already emerged, and it was enough to see them just to sort alphabetically some columns, like in this case, for instance. So the pattern extraction from the unstructured data was done using NLTK in Python, with which we extracted n-grams of different sizes, and then we represented them using row graphs. What we got was a series of visualization like this one. We produced many with different settings, and from those visualizations, which are quite raw, as you can see here, and but are annotated and represented a way to solidify some steps in the research, we were able to learn something new from the data. So first of all, we confirmed the fact that this data is very intimate, being I was the most common bigram, and we confirmed also the fact that males, the most of perpetrators are males. But interestingly, we saw from the data that we analyzed that this phenomenon is bound to a verbal dimension and less to a physical one. But however, this doesn't render it as less harmful because many people unfortunately developed a series of mental disorders out of the incident. We know that sexual harassment is closely related to the hierarchy in academy, meaning that usually it's performed by professors against students, and that the people who experience it usually do not report it because they are afraid of the consequences or because they knew that the harassers are going to be just protected by their colleagues. And this end up in having people avoiding places, avoiding other people, changing their fields, changing the university, or even to drop their careers. So this step helped us in enhancing our understanding of the data as a whole, because we were able to distant read all the survey answers. However, this treating of the data and also this way of visualizing it gave us the feeling that it was not working well because the participants' voice are break up and are weakened a lot. And this gave us the idea that it's not a good way to represent with visualization the social issue, and it's not a good way for honoring the voices. So for these reasons, we decided to explore different ways, different approaches that somehow we can define less conventional because they merge strategies and methodologies coming from other fields. So what we decided to do was to create a set of metadata from a dataset that you can see here that is created on top of what we learned previously, and that were able to represent the survey entries. We did this manually by reading the entries. And of course, given the amount of them, this is a process that is still ongoing, and we just coded or tagged about the 10% of them. As you can see, the data is still in the form of a spreadsheet, but is more structured compared from before, and the headers are different, and they embed the most important things that we believe are to be expressed out of these surveys and stories. As you can see, not all the cells are filled, and that's because we didn't find inside of the reports information for everything. But we decided that this is fine, and we can solve this on the visual side. So, talking about visuals, we knew at this point that our visualization should have should fulfill two requirements. So first of all, we want it to be engaging, because we want people to be able to spend time on it, to reflect, to contemplate, in order to recognize the fact that this is a problem of an entire community that shouldn't be underreported. And secondarily, we wanted to find a visual solution that was able to bring those personal stories in the foreground without silencing them and with a respectful visual treatment. Actually, the first explorations were still in this hybrid space between data and graphics and graphic design, but we had this idea of having a space, a 2D bidimensional and digital space that people could explore, could pan, could zoom, and in which we would place the elements corresponding to the stories according to their similarity. We did this, we created these coordinates in the space using multidimensional scaling, but then we had the problem of what shape should we give to those elements. And we started exploring around the idea of having elements made of text like spirals, and we went on with this process, giving other chances to other shapes. The problem with the things that you see here is that most of them are arbitrary, and they do not have a meaning behind of them. And while searching for something that were meaningful, we actually came to the idea of using knots of text. And knots of text proved to be quite a good solution to us for a couple of reasons. So let's start from the most pragmatical. We can use parameters to draw them, and those parameters are the data values behind every survey. So as you can see, we used this hexagonal grid to create points in the space, and then we made a mathematical curve to pass through the points corresponding to the data values of each entry. And incidents with different data descriptions have different shapes. But Secondarily, and probably even more important, is a metaphorical value of the knot. There is a quite used colloquialism that is to have a knot in the stomach that is used to represent a discomfort, a feeling, a bad feeling. And that feeling actually is the one that we had while manual tagging the data while reading all the descriptions. So we felt that the knot is able to create a connection between the feeling behind of the data and the visual representation of them. And also, the knot can be unraveled with an animation that we believe is kind of engaging, and it can reveal other information and can reveal also the possibility to get to the original data, meaning the actual testimony that people inserted in the current survey. So on top of that idea, we created this interface in which we have a filter for showing or hiding certain reports depending on the data values. And we have the possibility to reorganize in the space according to the victim status and the harasser status. And we believe this is important for self-identification because I can go and look for people similar to my profile and see their experiences. And last but not less important, we decided to introduce a further feature, meaning the recording of voices of volunteers who decided to read aloud the excerpts of the stories.
He believes scientists get along better if they sleep around at conferences. Under the pretense of dinner, then tried to get me to sleep over with her.
What did you expect? You're pretty. I felt lost.
So we decided to add this feature because, as you can probably also recognize, it's able to enhance the emotional impact of the visualization and to underline our desire of showing this data in a human way. Also, there is a pragmatical reason, that is because during an exhibition this could draw attention of people passing by. And the third one actually is the feeling that we had that while recording these voices, we can also show and manifest our support for the people who decided to participate and expose themselves by answering this survey. I think that what we can learn from this project is related to the use of visualization for the communication of certain social themes, such as the one of sexual harassment. Visualization can be a good medium for creating this communication, but we have to focus not only on its analytical essence, but also, and more specifically, on its communicative essence or power. When I think about visualization, I usually think about a tool that is capable of efficiently represent a large quantity of data. But however, in this project, there are other aspects that are involved and are connected with our strongly connected within our human nature, such as the fact that we wanted to acknowledge the intimate nature of the data. We wanted to be respectful for the survey participants, or also the fact that we struggled a lot to searching for a suitable way to structure the data and to visualize the data. By doing certain action, I think we accept the fact that visualization is a tool for communication, and we can use it, and we have to use it to convey a certain message, and not only as a machine that we can use to show evidence. As we also experienced during our distant reading steps, the things that we usually do when creating visualization can bring us on a different path from the one described before. However, as visualization researchers and designers, we can go and look for methodologies coming from other fields, such as, for instance, anthropology or communication design, to find a good way to nurture those human aspects that we can find in the data and that we want to communicate. Thank you all for listening, and I'd like to thank all the people who co-authored this publication, people in the labs, the VIA Lab and the Density Design Lab, who gave me and us many suggestions, and of course all the volunteers and all the people who participated to the survey. Thank you.